Could you build a business that's better for our planet? That's what I have set out to answer. Hi, I'm Marco Pimentel, marketing expert and entrepreneur, and host of the podcast Someone Like You. I become fascinated in finding creative climate solutions in business, and on the podcast, I break down how founders and CEOs are building climate-friendly business solutions that are opportunities for growth while being better for the planet. I wanted to take a second to tell you about our Season 2 sponsor, Digital Scope. Did you know your website has a carbon footprint? Well, digital technology has a larger carbon footprint than the entire aviation industry, and it's only getting bigger. Digital power consumption is increasing by 9% every year. At this rate, our digital carbon footprint could be responsible for as much as 14% of global emissions by 2040. If you're a digital-first company, or really any company with a website, and want to understand the impact your website is having on the environment, Digital Scope can translate visitor data into carbon measurement, all with a simple one line of code added to your website. Check out digitalscope.com/someonelikeyou. The first 100 people to sign up get free access for an entire year.
Everything that we make, everything that you make in the world, is going to return to the earth. Whether in 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, 100 years. Is it going to return to the earth as food, or is it going to return to the earth as poison?
The system is built on oppression and keeps the wheels of exploitation turning. Today's guest is Colin Vernon, co-founder and CTO of Slow Factory, a New York-based environmental and social justice nonprofit organization. Colin has worn many hats over the years, from performer and musician to producer, community organizer, and self-taught coder, always with a key concern for social and environmental ethics. I speak to Colin on building community power through open source education led by the global majority, producing and backing regenerative designs that are better for the environment, and on Slow Factory being for the builders, dreamers, and really the people who give a shit and who would rather choose transparency over profit. With over 400,000 followers on social media and hundreds of free and inclusive educational seminars, Slow Factory is showing us that leading structural change is possible, all while being economically and environmentally feasible. Here is our conversation. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to just start with background. To me, understanding what your background was before you co-founded Slow Factory, and was there a connection to sustainability and to climate change? Like, what were you doing before, and was there anything related to what you're doing now?
Yes, the connection runs deep, and I have done many, many things in my life, and I think there's the two kind of threads that run through everything is about a real kind of human ethics and value and community, and on the other side, where those humans and animals and plants are going to live. As broadly as that, everything that we're doing at Slow Factory, everything I'm doing before and presumably after, it's going to be about just really being present where we are in the world, how we're contributing to what's going on in a way that's positive. So to get more specific, I have been many, many things. Performer, musician and producer, community organizer around artistic and intellectual property with Creative Commons. I've been owned a media agency doing software, video production. I've done a lot in software. And the software stuff really grew out of seeing a need to connect people and community around, around ideas, around ethics and ideas. So before we had things like Facebook, or even blogs, or these WordPress, these types of software, I had taught myself over many sleepless nights how to code, program, and build, kind of social networks, proto-social networks before this stuff happened, just to connect people in my community, where I was at the time was in Montreal, and connecting our artists, musicians, the kind of queer party scene, all the different kind of worlds that I was part of, in a way that was decentralized, was empowering for everybody involved, and allowed everybody to kind of have their vision of a better way to do things, a better world, and a better relation to each other. So from that, all the software stuff I've done, a lot of it has been around larger platforms, connecting community, communities that have specific values that are driven to make change in the world. It's always about kind of building a team, building a community, building a company, an organization that's really pointed to a goal. There's a really clear mission, and that mission always is around, for me, social inclusion, progressive values, and in that all the decisions have to be also informed by what's going on in environmental health. Like, how are we relating to repressive structures? How are we pushing forward and making choices that are going to make the biggest effect that we can have on these massive systems? So that kind of set the stage for when we were starting the initial Slow Factory. Everything was around, we kind of stumbled into that it was around fashion, supply chain and sourcing, and creating things in the world that have a real key concern for social environmental ethics. And so the evolution of that has become that Slow Factory as a platform, as a community, as our education initiative, incubation, incubator and granting programs, all of the big community that's around Slow Factory is always still embedded with those values. I mean, I started a company not as a capitalist, let's say, but we live within capitalism. Great. We have to, I'm not going to have that argument. But I started as a way of everybody who's going to be around me, somebody's going to be their boss, and they're going to work, and all their effort is going to be towards something. I have grown into the idea that I can do that, and I can build a community. I can build a thing around that. So that was really my driving force around creating a company that had a financial sustainability so that we can make a life. And so what we're doing now is that out of all of this really broad and disparate kind of action, everything aligning to our higher mission, I've seen an opportunity where we've run across a lot of people doing really interesting things, whether in technology, in social organization. And we ran across a technology that was doing leather. I use that term loosely because it's a new, different type of material, but it was able to create a leather-like material with 97% less environmental and carbon footprint. And then this thing kind of needed somebody to take it and steward it and make it real in the world. And so we took on that. Basically mantle, and have done what I've done a number of times, which is create a company around something, a legal structure, and I've taken on the responsibility of doing that in order to accomplish the larger social environmental goals that I see that are able to be accomplished by that product and that material. I'm kind of diving a little bit into the company Slow Factory Labs, which we have recently formed, and is really pushing this new material and suite of new materials. Everything that we make, everything that you make in the world, is going to return to the earth, whether in 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, 100 years. Is it going to return to the earth as food, or is it going to return to the earth as poison? And that's really that fundamental interface with the physical world drives everything that we do, specifically in Slow Factory Labs. And more broadly, I think about that everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, everything I look at, I see, where is this going to end up in 20 years, 50 years, 1,000 years, 100 years? Is it going to be food for the earth to regenerate and continue to live? Is it going to be a poison that's going to be around forever, just slowly leaching, or being a weight and a garbage and a waste? Because humans invented the idea of waste. There's no waste in nature. Everything cycles around. So this kind of really lofty or philosophical sounding idea really drives practically and directly how we make decisions in the world on a company level, and what even we're going to pursue that is a company. How, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with our time? That's the question on this earth, right? What are you going to do with this time on the earth? You have a short period.
Yeah.
Let's make it amazing. Let's make it inspiring for everyone around it. I want to be gathering around me where everyone around me feels empowered and hopeful and excited, and what they're doing is building for something greater and is directly living the values that we have and is creating something different.
We had Jen Harper from Cheekbone Beauty, and she had mentioned something in that line of, I believe it's the Iroquois that use this methodology, and they call it seven generations, and that when you create something, it needs to last for seven generations, and have to think much longer term of the impact and how that will be.
Of course, it's not just you. There's so there's a phrase that we've been thinking about these days, actually. So Louis XV, and he's known for this. I don't know if this is like really obscure, but there's this phrase called "Après moi le déluge," which is "after me the flood," meaning like after I die, I don't care if the earth floods and everything goes away. It doesn't matter, which is a really like solipsistic and generally how Western culture thinks about those type of decisions. And of course, we're like, well, no, there's not going to be like after you, the world's going to end. Definitely thinking about 7 and 20 generations ahead of you. Of course, that's truly the type of thinking we have to be implementing. We have to be looking at what is this really going to do in the long term? And the long term is not like your 5-year plan. The long term is like your great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren.
Yeah. So you started 2012. I would love to understand what was the initial idea. And so Slow Factory is fairly multifaceted. You've built, quite a few different divisions within and under the Slow Factory, brand. Your educators, your storytellers. You provide research. Like you said, you have Slow Hide, which is a product. But what was in 2012 when you created this nonprofit? What was the initial idea, and what was the first thing that you did to when you created the Slow Factory brand and said, "Here is what we're going to start doing"?
So as many great things we have taken many different approaches. We have really evolved what we're doing. And as many great things have started with an immediacy. Well, let's do this. Let's do this thing based around just our ethos. I mean, the first thing we had done is make fashion accessories. And when we went to make those, that's the first moment was, there's really clear, easy, cheap, straightforward ways to make physical things in the world. But then immediately, being people of ethics and conscience and thinking people, we looked at that and said, no, that's not what it's about. Our time on this earth is not about finding the quickest, easiest, dirtiest way to do something and sell it and have the most profitable situation. Because then what we're doing is passing on the cost of creating that to the earth, to people we don't see, that live far away, that are in a leveraged relationship based on historical colonialism. It's really bad. So then immediately it was like, no, there's something definitely bigger here. We started making collections that were paired with nonprofits, where we would raise funds for on collections. We would raise funds for different nonprofit partners, and then have evolved into gathering together across industries to advocate and point to specific solutions and better ways that people, the companies can source, that can do things. And then that has evolved into basically greater and greater programs and larger initiatives, and making our own making our own products and companies out of it. In a way, initially it was about showing how to do it and what we should all care about, because proof in the pudding, people don't seem to care because they're acting in such a way. And so advocating and pointing for that they should care, making a clear case for here is what caring about this looks like, and then continuing to multiply that effort, continuing to point out, and then maybe this is the most fundamental goal and mission of the Slow Factory kind of family is given any situation, what is the thing that is going to lead to a structural change? What is the facet of it that's really important that generally is not being followed? What is the position or the facet or the perspective that really everybody should be thinking about that we don't see reflected out there? Well, let's reflect that. Let's do that. Let's push this mindset. Let's push this solution. Let's push this because that's what's going to solve. That's what's going to solve it. That's what's going to push progress. That's what's going to make more people, companies, etc., make better choices. Is that they see that they should care, and that they can care, that there's options out there, there's ways to do things. So again, back to kind of the lab. I mean, my background being in the community, in performance, in software, in hardware, in really really broad. Getting into material science over the past few years, as we were supporting that research, and then having evolved that into the company who's focused on it. It's again just another aspect of, well, let's show everybody that you can do it and that you should do it, and that it's not only socially, environmentally sustainable, but it can be economically sustainable, and that's where we got to go. So that's how I think about it.
And is that how you think about when you do your research? You're doing research for the greater of the good, essentially. Obviously you're creating this research papers. Are they open source? Are they given to anybody that wants to see this because it's basically allowing to have greater change?
Yeah, everything we do as much as possible is open source, is open knowledge, is created. And for example, researchers that we support who come through, whether they're fellows, whether they're instructors and teaching in our education programs, this is really incredible people that we find, we bring in, we support in the ways that we can, and that their research is their research, and their work is their work, and they're providing examples. A lot of what we do is providing people with a critical framework and understanding, so that even in their personal lives, in their careers in particular, they're able to have power, agency, knowledge, all of these things pushed, so that everybody who comes across our platform, everybody who comes across the work and intersects with the work, with our work, the work of people we support, is given that in a way that pushes them forward, in a way that allows them to continue in a stronger way. So similarly in the work that we're doing in the lab, similarly in the work that we're doing in the education programs, it's got to drive a larger mission.
The Slow Factory name and brand is across kind of, I don't know if you'd call it divisions or how you explain it, but for people listening, Slow Factory is an education platform. You've built an incredible audience to learn and to understand things and topics, in addition to processes and research papers in your lab, which also focus on the material side. And then you also have your product side, which is Slow Hide as well. So how does the brand play across all of those different divisions, or how you break that down?
So to be clear, that there's basically an umbrella and a mindset, and Slow Factory Labs is a separate company. In order to build a material science company, we need to have kind of a more classical company structure that is investable, that is, because it takes a lot of resources to develop a material. So that's a separate thing, and it has its own separate team. The resources of it are all separate, so that it's really focused on this goal. There's another entity being the main nonprofit, where we have a lot of our work, a lot of the education stuff, incubation platforms, everything. And then that, again, it has its own team, it has its own structure. And the thing that brings it together is really the underlying mindset and mission. And it's less of a brand than a goal and a mission and a perspective, and like, this is what we're here for. Let me put it this way. we didn't start out to build a brand. We started out to live in the best way that we could and encourage anyone around us who's interested and excited about the same things to live in the best way they can and share that as best as they can and support all the amazing people around us that we discover who are doing their best. I'm inspired by people who are doing the most, people who are doing everything they can. And the more that our work, our mindset, our regenerative design, our work with companies, our narrative change platforms, the more that can inspire people, the more that can inspire people to do in their lives the best that they can and impact the things that they can. We're for the builders and the dreamers and the people who dare to give a I don't know what if I'm allowed to swear on this, but we're for people who give a shit. You can bleep that out. We're for people who dare to give a shit and try and build and don't get stuck on criticizing or competition or what everybody else is doing that's not perfect, that's not stuck on perfection, and we're not stuck on blaming individual people for individual actions within a larger system that is built to be oppressive. It's built to be disempowering. It's built to make people in fight with each other. It's built to do all these things to keep the wheels of exploitation in place turning, basically. So anybody who sees this, anything that we can do to make that more clear, anything that we can do to build structures, whether they're social structures or company structures or physical materials, to combat this in a way that's inspiring to others, that's what we do.
And you've done it well, and you've done it with quite a bit of vigor and audience building. And so I wanted to ask you that because, over 23,000, I'm sure it's probably more now, students, you've built an audience across your media platforms as well. Why do you think so many people have engaged with Slow Factory?
I mean, yeah, so that number it's bigger now, and those are people specifically enrolled in an education program. The narrative change pillar of what we do has almost 500,000 people on Instagram, for example. I'm not counting numbers, but just the numbers and the platform and what it is that it comes back to why people resonate with Slow Factory is I think they feel the energy behind it. They see that energy of caring. We work every day to try our best to put it into whatever action we can take to change minds, change industries, and push the whole thing forward. And like I said before, there's so many moments where there's an issue happening or there's a systemic structure in place where there is a certain kind of narrative and mindset and structure that serves perpetuating that as an oppressive structure. When there's a really, really clearly different way to look at it or different way to do it that is going to run counter to that. And that's what we always are searching for. And that's what we always are uplifting. And that's what we always are doing as much as possible. I think that resonates with people. I think people see the structure, the struggle. People see that we're as human and honest as possible and transparent as possible. And that's what draws me to other people who are trying to build and to create and to to make a change in the world. And I think it goes the other way around. Like people see that that's what we're trying to do, and we're always about the clarity, transparency, and bringing together the best and bringing together the best ideas, the best ways to accomplish things, the best systems. So we're all about systemic change. All the structures, basically, that govern our lives, the infrastructures, economic systems, everything in the Western world anyway, we're talking about, have a clear lineage into colonialism. They have a clear lineage. Even me, I talk about I go really wide and think about the English Empire, which is, Britain, America, everything, these are descendants of the Roman Empire. It's like the imperial mindset governs our thoughts, and pointing to that and doing as much as possible on a ideological or a narrative front, on a systemic front in our relation to businesses and the ways that the economic relationships, shining a light on that, giving people as many tools as possible to understand and to fight back against that in a way that is life affirming. It's not an anti, it's life affirming. It's trying to say, no, this is a different way. This is another thing that we can do. Here's a structure that's wrong, and this is where it comes from. And so that we can name it, we can disempower it, because we're trying to go in a different direction. We're going to try to do something different. I think that's what people resonate with.
Every week on Someone Like You, we dive into stimulating conversations with founders, entrepreneurs, business owners, and the likes who are consciously and successfully creating sustainable business solutions for the long haul. Tune in every week for a new inspiring conversation on leading climate solutions. And if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget, please subscribe on the platform of your choice and give us a rating and a review. And one of those tools is courses and education, which is incredibly powerful. What are the type of courses that you offer?
Yeah, education. I mean, many people have said many things about it, but education being a fundamental building block of personal and societal empowerment. Why you think right now there is such an attack on education, especially in the US? I'm sure you follow in the US. Right now, the attacks on education, censorship, banning books, banning people's free choices in the name of, anyway, I'm not going to go too deep down on that, but the attacks on education show we understand that education is such a powerful and fundamental tool for how we create our worlds and live in our worlds and go forward. So for us, the education, it's got to be free. It's got to be informed by, the anti-colonial perspectives. It's got to be clearly driven by, for us at Slow Factory, it's very important that that's almost entirely from people from the global majority who are have a really clear and direct perspective in relation to the kind of dominant colonial culture. That's really important. And then so everything we do, even if it seems like something really simple or straightforward or practical, for example, when we're going to give like practical workshops around upcycling that have an environmental perspective, they're going to also be embedded with with this culture that is looking at larger power structures, that is, the history that leads us here, and what are the power structures that lead us here, what is the exploitation that get us here.
Yeah, very powerful. And I was lucky to get out to a college here called Pearson, and they have a grade 11 and 12 students a climate course, and one of the semesters is led by Indigenous teacher to kind of give that type of understanding in the food system, and very, very similar. And it was just amazing to hear these 11 and grade 11 and 12-year-olds from around the world that come to this school and their perspectives, and definitely very, very powerful. With everything that you've built, from the nonprofit on the Slow Factory side to the for-profit side of the labs and Slow Hide, which is a leather alternative that is, like you said, a much more sustainable option. How have you built that in terms of, for the entrepreneurs that are listening or the builders that are listening? How have you funded all of this along the way? Was it difficult, or was it easy, or?
The short answer is by any means necessary, by pure spleen. I'm going to say it's like, it's stressful and nonstop. Is it easy? No, not at all. And we've done it and continue to do it as much as possible, broadly leveraging the support. And it goes like this. We want to see this thing happen in the world, and we're going to do it, and we're going to do it no matter what. And then we're going to go as broadly as possible to bring people on board who want to see it also happen in the world. So more specifically, for example, we have a mix of, for the nonprofit, we have a mix of funding between the public who support us, foundations, corporate donors and sponsors. That's all a ton of work around the work, but that's necessary. That's what happened. This is the necessary evil, if you will. I don't think that money is evil. Just a lot of the way that power is deployed in a way is evil, but money is energy. So people who have resources and see the work and want to do it and want to support that work, I think that's beautiful. And that's where we're going. So the reason that the Ladder, it's a for-profit investable entity, is because that has different capital requirements, and we need to make it happen in the world. So we got to do what we got to do, the relation to the larger, legal and economic structures of our society, in order to make it happen. And that's also hard. I mean, raising money in any kind of venture is a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. There's somebody saying some kind of saying around, you got to talk to 100, you got to pitch 100 people before you get one person on. And for sure, we're on that ratio. And then similarly in the nonprofit, there's just a lot of work. We've been blessed that the companies, mission aligned companies who want to see that work happen, have come and support us. We've been blessed that the public has been able to support us in a meaningful way and sees that and wants that work to continue. The people who come to the programs, who are benefited, are deeply appreciative. That work is not done, and that work is kind of never done. But we do it from the perspective of, we're going to do this anyway, no matter what, because we know it needs to exist in the world. And so far, we're still here. So the world is responding with like, yes, it should exist in the world. But that doesn't mean it's not difficult. That doesn't mean there's not times when we're, really stressed to how we're going to accomplish this thing that we need to accomplish. That doesn't mean there's not ups and downs. But it's definitely like, gratitude, deep gratitude that we're still here, that we're still able to do it, that we're still able to focus on what we know has to happen in the world, that our team and board and everybody is behind us, and that the support around what we're doing is real, and we're deeply grateful.
If you think about, I don't have to say 3 or 5 years, but just in general, where you want to be and where do you want to take Slow Factory from an impact and a business perspective, the two sides, and business can be impactful, like you said, and it could be a force for good. And I think that's what you're trying, what you're saying with on the for-profit side, and mm-hmm. That's, pretty much everybody we interview here. They're incredibly mission driven, and they use, business to do that. So where do you want to take Slow Factory over the coming years, and what's on the radar to continue to build on?
Yeah, great question. I'll start with one side of it, which is, because you said something in the question, which is about business as a force of good type of thing. And this is, I want to just pause here for a second, because that phrase can be really misused or misleading, especially by sometimes, the worst offenders, or the idea that, conscious capitalism type of stuff. I think it's really different when we're starting from a kind of grassroots perspective. We're starting from building something from the ground up with a really, really different mindset, versus when we're looking at things that have a similar type of calling card around, like, how is business going to save the world? When you see like the Davos or the World Economic Forum or this type of stuff, just want to put it out there. They say the same thing, and that's not the answer. So I want to be really clear about that business won't inherently solve anything or fix anything. Looking at a purely economic model, we don't actually live in an economy, we live in a society. So that's why, I mean, that's why the Canadian side of me is like, wow, that's why I'm a socialist, not an economist, because the economy is part of society, not the other way around. So I think that I just want to level set that everything that we're doing, yes, economic positivity and sustainability based on the social positivity and environmental positivity, everything. But then going to where I want to be in 5 years, specifically in the lab, we're going to have every meter of material, whether it's traditional leather, whether it's plastic-based polyurethane or PVC or any other kind of leather material, or even looking into plastic-based packaging, which we're expanding into. Everything that every meter that we replace is a massive reduction. It's a massive gain for the environment, for the social and environmental impact. So on the one hand, I have no choice but to see it as we should grow as much as possible, because if we replace the whole leather industry, we're gonna save. There's some calculation where it's like 30 billion kilogram CO2 equivalency is just the like kind of finished leather industry. Like that's massive. So for sure, we want to go as big as possible. But that's not such an interesting answer. A more interesting answer is grow that out to be as broad as possible. And in the lab, particularly, we're growing out more broader and horizontally what we're doing, meaning different types of product, different types of materials that have different uses, to have the same type of mindset, which is that, the social environmental impact and responsibility of what we're doing is key. And that's has to be the driver. And then so on the other side, on the nonprofit side, on the education, on the institute that we're creating, on our impact on people's lives, I have clear feedback from our really, really broad community that they want and need and love everything we're doing at Slow Factory. It's directly and positively impacting their lives and the lives of their families, the lives of their communities. So similarly, I kind of have a responsibility to grow that and to at one point make it bigger so that it can have a bigger and more positive impact on more people. And at the other side, or in hand with that, have everybody continue to be really involved and to help shape where it goes, and to have that be a beautiful and positive force in society.
We are getting very close to our time, and I just have one question kind of just remaining. Is I bring it up often, is the book The Lorax, which
I love this question. Actually, I read it, and I love the question because the Lorax, the question is phrased as a cautionary tale, primarily about a person's responsibility to the environment. Sorry, maybe I'll let you say the question.
yeah, no, you and I ask it, but it is, when you talk about growing and you talking about that idea, like I was kind of laughing because I was thinking about the this question and the fact that this book is about them growing, biggering and biggering and biggering until all the trees are gone and you can't do any more. And I think the heart of this question really just kind of comes down to the people often just don't know what to do. Like if they were that child with a seed and just call the seed an opportunity, if it's somebody that wants to build a business and I want to get into the climate, I want to either be an employee in, or I want to, be an entrepreneur and I want to change the textile space or the food space or, but I don't know how to do it or I don't want to do it. And I think really the question really comes down to is, and what we want to know is, what would you say to that individual?
Yeah. So I will start with the book and the thinking of the book and the way that we're thinking about the question, which is this: if the Lorax is a cautionary tale about the person's responsibility to the environment, I would challenge that, because to me, this story it's personified, but it's really about systemic exploitation. And so it's really really important to think about when it's a systemic exploitation, that it requires a systemic solution. And when that there's a large, again, exploitative and destructive and oppressive structures driven by unfathomably complex systems that benefit a small group of people a lot, but that it's based on systemic exploitation of the environment and of people. The answer to that is not what is one person going to do. So we think about this a lot. There's a lot of people that, what can I do to be more environmentally friendly? Even if every single person that either of us and everyone they've ever met or will meet in their entire life somehow effectively reduce their environmental footprint to zero, there's still, what is the stat? There's like 100 fossil fuel companies who are doing 78% of all of the carbon emissions in the world. So even if everybody, goes vegan, makes this and that choice, never buys any new clothes again, XYZ, we can add to the list of everything you can do personally. Even if all that happens, we're still in the same situation, because the overwhelming majority of all of the environmental damages going on in the world, it's at a systemic level by a certain identifiable group of corporate entities. So like all of that points to, it's about systemic change. So if, for example, there's a movement around revoking Citizens United and revoking the idea of even corporate personhood, or some of these things that are like structural, it's about what can we do to point to, first of all, and identify and speak to and name and clarify and bring into focus what is the structural issue involved, and then go from there. So I like the idea, if you're like, well, you have a seed, you should definitely think about, if the seed is an idea, if your idea is, I'm going to cut down this tree and turn it into a thing, we're going to think about multiplying that, and back to the original idea of what's the like multi-generational effect of that idea. If I do this a lot, is it going to be good or bad? And for me, that's really that's really the thing. One is taking the individual blame out of systemic problems and really pointing to them as systemic issues. And then the other thing is, if you do have an idea, is it going to be good if you do it a lot? There is another viewpoint that basically all problems, the only aspect of any problem that's important is scale. You can take the most toxic substance, the most like mythically toxic substance, and you put one drop in the ocean, it's gonna adjust itself. But it's the scale of that matters. So similarly, the Lorax he cut down one tree, no problem. But it was that something that is fundamentally toxic or exploitative was then continued at scale. So we think about that, basically the relation of what is your position, what is your impact, like what is the structure of it, and then what is the scale of it. So similarly, the solution, it's only going to be a solution if it's a solution at scale. It's only going to be regenerative if it can actually be a real scaled solution that can cut something that's really exploitative and destructive out of the picture. So that would be what I would say to everybody, is think about, how are you interacting intentionally with systemic issues? How are you working towards what you're doing, in whether it is, again, in legal, in marketing, in everything, whatever is your interest, in product design, in creation, in everything. What's your relation to the systemic nature of the thing that you're looking at? How can you make that impact be positive, and so that when you're doing it at scale, or that you're changing the relation of the power structure, how is that going to affect the systemic oppression, exploitation of the environment that you're wanting to make it better?
Well, that's incredibly said, and I think a very, very important point for everybody to take home, and to hopefully include in their thoughts and into the future of whatever they're focusing on. Colin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
How can we find out more about Slow Factory?
You can go. A big way that people follow us is on online. So we're slowfactory.earth. From there, you can go to the other companies, slowfactorylabs.co, slowhide.com. It's like rawhide, but slowhide. On Instagram and Twitter and social, we're the Slow Factory. And you can follow what we're doing, signing up for a newsletter, following us, check it out, get in touch. We're really, really open. We love collaborating. We love seeing what people are doing that's exciting and interesting and new, and or doesn't even have to be new. But yeah, follow us online. Check us out. Reach out. We love to hear what people are working on.
Well, thank you, and congratulations to you and obviously everybody on your team that have put in an incredible effort to create what you have created across all the different groups. And we will be cheering you on and watching as you continue on with your mission.
Thanks so much. It's been great.
This podcast is co-produced with The Brand is Female. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Someone Like You. And if you did, please share this. We're a new podcast, and I would love it if you could share it with a family member, friend, colleague, work colleague. Share it on Slack, whoever you do. Just share and spread the message of these incredible brands. Please also support these type of companies. They're doing the hard thing, and the hard thing often takes a lot of people to get on board. And don't forget, please subscribe on the platform of your choice and give us a rating and review. I'm Marco Pimentel. Thank you for joining us today. For more information on Someone Like You, you can find us on Instagram at Someone Like You Podcast with all the links to the podcast, our website, and more information about the brands that we feature. Thank you again.